Blessed be y'all, this is Jen Fremont. This is my second video on imagining things. Probably about a year and a half ago, something like that, I was introduced to a book called The Fifth Sacred Thing. And I was introduced to that because I had gone to a meetup of libertarians, and they were talking about other governmental structures that we don't really think about. When we think about governmental structures, we usually, probably the three biggest ones would be democracy, communism, and monarchy would probably be the top three. But you could also throw in there representative democracy, which is a form of democracy, and dictatorship. That's pretty much what we see today. We usually don't see pure democracy because that would be pretty much mob rules type thing, where everything is taken to a full vote of the people. And I could see that maybe working in a small village or something like that. I could see that might actually work, but in a larger context, it really doesn't. We have been born, bred, indoctrinated for a few millennia that there has to be a top-down governmental structure of some kind. That up until probably 150 years ago or so, that was mostly a monarchy type thing. At that libertarian meeting, I was introduced to a concept that was practiced in Northern Europe, and I'm not sure the time frame. I think it was in the medieval period, actually, maybe earlier than that. And that is a structure where you have 3 or 4 different governmental sets of rules, and the person is free to choose which set of rules they want to live under. And I can see how that would work okay in a small population. That would be hard to implement on a much larger scale in the world we have today, because there's a lot of things that do need to be, I see that do need to be standardized. I mean, if you're going to have a speed limit on the street, it should probably be standardized, because if you've got one guy that's licensed by one authority and one that's licensed by another authority, and one says you can go 30 in this zone and one says you can go 50, how do you ever enforce anything like that, But that's kind of, it stretches your mind. In that meeting showed me how locked in I was to the idea of a top-down governmental structure, and I found it so hard to think of anything outside of that box. And when I mentioned that to somebody I know, she recommended that book, The Fifth Sacred Thing. And she actually lent me the book, and it was quite a while, and I never did read the physical book, but February before last I bought me a Kindle. And for various reasons that I figured it would be easier than reading paper books in certain situations. And it has been. It really has been. But in that book, it talks about, it wasn't really a structure where, you were told exactly what to do and stuff like that. Everybody had an assigned job, but they also had a lot more freedom, and they weren't dependent on money and things like that, because the goods and the services and things like that were freely shared. And that opened my eyes a bit, and also the way that they dealt with the other folks that were coming in to try to conquer them, which was surprising to me. I won't ruin the book for you if you want to read it exactly, but they had a different way of doing that, and I don't know if it's the right way or not, and it took them a lot of sacrifice to be able to implement that way of thinking in a very... had to have a lot of resolve to be able to do that, because it wasn't an easy thing, and a lot of people got killed in the process. So don't know if that's a good thing or a bad thing, but that book showed me that there are ways of thinking outside the box of what works. It takes place in a post-atomic war San Francisco area, where most of the land is not very hospitable. And there is another, top-down governmental control structure that wishes to, re-implement their control over the entire area. So that's where this colony, this city, runs into trouble. But we have been so trained that that's all there is. You can choose to be a democracy or I always want to say capitalism, because some ways capitalism could be a governmental structure where business decides. Well, that's fascism for you. That is the definition of fascism, where business is actually the one that's in charge of everything, and they pull the strings of the government behind the scenes. And I see that in a lot of ways that's what we have today is fascism, because the big businesses, they get their agenda done for the most part, and the people suffer. But I've also, there's another book called Dark Money that talks about how the libertarian way of thinking has been promoted a lot by very wealthy individuals for the express purpose of removing any sort of governmental controls on how they treat workers or how they pollute the environment, because they have run into problems with that sort of thing. So I can see that a pure system like libertarianism, where the government did not regulate anything, could run really afoul. I don't know what the answer is exactly. I still struggle with trying to get it in my mind that there are other ways to do this. And you've got to be able to know that there's another way before you can do another way. So, I think I'm going to leave it at that. And I will pick up on some other books and stuff here. This is Jen Freemind. Blessed be y'all.